Chapter 6046. Charlie couldn't help but turn his eyes red and murmur. I heard Uncle Ju say that the separation of fate is extremely painful. It is the most painful thing he has ever seen in his life. The matter of the one dragon divided into two dragons mentioned here. Although it does not completely separate the fate, but at least half of it. This must be very painful. My father, actually, did it for me. Suffering such extraordinary pain twice. Maria nodded slightly and said with emotion. Poor parents, there are probably countless parents in the world who are willing to endure extreme hardships for their children. My father clearly had 5 years of immortality back then. 100 years of opportunity, but I would rather die than leave this opportunity me. I think I feel the same as your father. Charlie murmured, why bother? When he used the dragon-splitting technique. I hadn't been born yet, why do you have to pay so much for me? Why didn't he think about it? Maybe I don't want the dragon rank, let alone the immortality. Maria said with a bitter smile, my father had never thought about it. In fact, I do not want to live for such a long time. I am afraid that no one in this world can imagine the hardships I have endured for more than 300 years. Charlie sighed and asked her, my father after using the dragon-splitting technique. His destiny has been reduced from dragon grid. And his own fortune must be greatly affected, right? That's natural. Maria said, if his destiny has been reduced by 1 level. His fortune will be natural. I'm also going down a level. Charlie had mixed feelings in his heart, quietly wiped away his tears, and continued. Uncle Ju said that my father stripped me of my destiny before taking me away from the capital. In other words, after when I was 8 years old, he had already completed the transformation into a dragon. And returned from Jiaoga to Longa. And I must have completed the transformation into a dragon during those 8 years. But I was too young at that time and did not remember myself at all. There is something special about my childhood life, which means that my father not only divided his own dragon grid into 2 dragon grids. He even used his own efforts to raise our 2 dragon grids to the next level. Longa, I don't know how much effort and price it takes to do this in just a few years. Maria nodded and said, Sir, since we speculate that all these are dominoes left by the master, then everything must be within his calculation. Since the dragon-splitting technique in which 1 dragon divides into 2 dragons is written in the preface to the 9 mysteries scriptures, there must also be the dragon transformation technique in which 2 dragons can transform into dragons again. Otherwise, if Jiaoga cannot transform into a dragon, all the design steps will suddenly break. After saying that, she turned her eyes to the next section and exclaimed, Look, Master, there is indeed the dragon transformation technique. Charlie was attracted and quickly looked at the content behind it. Sure enough, even the name was exactly what Maria guessed. It was the art of transforming dragons. He couldn't wait to study it line by line. Then he discovered that the so-called dragon transformation technique required the person who used the dragon dividing technique to separate their fates to continuously use their mental methods to improve the fate of the 2 people. In other words, since his father divided his dragon grid into 2 dragon grids and gave one of the dragon grids to him, his and his father's dragon grid is like quantum entanglement, completely sharing the same advance and retreat. Every effort made by his father will act on the 2 people's dragons completely simultaneously. From that moment on, the burden of the 2 dragons transforming into dragons rests entirely on his shoulders. It is conceivable that in the 8 years after he was born, his father Changjing had been working hard for the 2 of them to transform into dragons. But his young self didn't know anything about it. What Charlie didn't expect was that his father would first split his own dragon grid into 2. Then upgraded the 2 dragon grids into dragon grids by himself. And finally, peel off his own lost dragon grid completely and gave it to him. At this moment, he felt extremely ashamed. If he was given a chance to choose, he would rather be an ordinary person who didn't understand the Taoism at all. Then his father who had paid so much for him ended up being destroyed together with his mother. When Charlie felt deeply guilty about his parents, Maria beside him also felt extremely complicated. She read the content at the end of Preface to the 9 Mysteries Scriptures again. And the more she read, the more frightened she became. She picked up one of the pieces of paper and said to Charlie, "Master, this section records how to find the 100,000 mountains." So the master's parents should have found the 100,000 mountains based on this record. The Secret of Immortality, and in the Secret of Immortality, he brought out the 9 mysterious heavenly scriptures. Charlie nodded and said, "Jermo once mentioned the Secret of Immortality when he was fighting with me that day. And there are all kinds of clues. All of them are consistent with your speculation." Maria's expression changed and she said, "Master, why do I feel that the master started planning a huge conspiracy more than 300 years ago?"